are an expert in emotional control, and you wrote a whole book on it. It's called My Mother's Rules: A Practical Guide to Becoming an Emotional Genius,
Very
which I what's that?
That was very cheeky of me. It was a grand claim, but
I love it. And since you wrote this book, and since I teach people how to negotiate with narcissists, I would love to talk with you about the lessons that your mother taught you and the lessons that you have learned in dealing with people who are extremely difficult, volatile, toxic, use whatever word you want to use. But when somebody is erratic, when somebody is volatile, it's very difficult to deal with them on an emotional level. And, I would say keeping your emotions in check is one of the most important things to do when you are negotiating. Would you agree with me on that?
absolutely. Part of a narcissist's power is the ability to destabilize you. That's part of their power, just to upset you and make you wobble. So I always think of my emotional life as separate and apart from my functional life, from my physical life. And so even in the midst of craziness, you got to have 15 minutes a day doing exercise or something joyful, where that person is put into the closet because he cannot or she cannot live in the forefront of your mind all the time, because he or she will be working against you all of the time. You still, this is an unwinding of a past life. It is not your present. You know what I mean? It's transitional in nature, and you have to make sure that you cradle your emotionality and how good you feel uh consciously. You got to make it pursue. It's from 7 to 8. I'm gonna do whatever it takes, not whatever it takes, but I'm going to feel better. I'm going to do things and live and be in the moment, and not simply be a divorcing person.
Yeah, and even if I mean, I also teach people how to negotiate in business as well. But regardless of who the person is that you're dealing with, if they're a narcissist, they know how to prey on your emotions. They know how to trigger you.
Right.
So, what would you say to somebody who is in the moment?
Mhm.
They're in the mediation, or they're in the
Mhm.
arbitration, or they're in the courtroom, and the person is saying things to absolutely trigger the other person. You're a thief, you're a liar, you're the narcissist, whatever they want to say to have you go, are you crazy? Are you kidding me? It's like that first instinct to just defend yourself. What would you say to them?
I always say, in any fight you have, no matter who it's with, the first battle is always with yourself. So you go in there knowing what's going to happen. You go in there ready to catch those slings and arrows and put them down. Make it a game in your head. Well, that's one. Well, that's two. Well, that's three. Look at him. Look at me. Not having a reaction. Very calm. Very. Take a look at your neck. Whatever you got to do to get you to to deliver an emotional response that'll freak them out, because they're not delivering, because you're not delivering to them what they expect. It's almost a game. Like, I take pleasure in not getting upset and excited with or to people that are trying to upset and excite me. It's fun.
Ah, that's so great. I mean, I've often said, like, look at them like as if they're having a 2-year old having a tantrum on the floor. Like, you're not going to go get into it, right? But I like it even better that you're saying, like, have fun with it. Just, oh, there they go, there they go.
Yeah, you know what, in the middle of issues or problems, somebody's trying to get to me. I always like, oh my God, that is the most beautiful bracelet. Like, what you think of me and what you're thinking is so irrelevant to me. I had time to look at your wardrobe, and I ain't scared of you. You're not frightening me. I'm not in battle with you, because I like your jewelry. And people like, and if you can send people off their game by being on your emotional game.
And what if people just don't feel that way? What do you think about fake it till you make it?
Absolutely. I lie to myself all the time. I'm not afraid of this. Every time before I get on a plane, I got to do a whole bunch of mental gymnastics. I'm like, I am afraid, but I'm just going to get my behind on it and go. So I've been faking it till I made it all my life. If you ask anybody who was raised around me, they were just like shocked at what I do because I was extraordinarily shy kid, just extraordinarily. So you can fake it till you make it, and then you won't. It'll actually become your reality.
Yeah. Each time you face your fear and you do something that you were afraid of, you get a little bit more
A little
courageous.
bit more, a little bit more, and eventually it doesn't bother you as much, and you can just do it.
You have said that your mother was an emotional genius.
Mhm.
Tell me more about that.
She was, and I think it was innate with her. And I think we used to when I was on the bench, that's when I realized how brilliant she was, because whenever I said anything that made a defendant like hang his head and say, wow, you know what, you got a point, it's because I've taken something that she's taught me, digested it, and reiterated it to him in a fashion that he could understand. And I used to talk, and my mother was very good at dealing with my father, who was bipolar. And I remember she told me a story when she was a little girl. Her mother had put her into an orphanage for Negro children back in the 30s during the Depression. And there was a little girl that used to play in the house next door, and mom used to think, oh, if I could just get out and play with that little girl, everything would be okay. And once she got out of the orphanage, she went running over to the little girl with her arms outstretched and said, little girl, little girl. And the little girl screamed and ran away. And mom said she stopped, looked around. She said, you know what? It ain't no better out here than it wasn't there, and kept it moving. And I just think that's how she has the ability to stop and assess how she felt about something. And if it's not borne out, she can put a period on it and do something else. And that's what she taught me.
So, what happens if somebody is super like emotions have gotten red hot in a negotiation? Whether it's something your mother has taught you or something you would know. How would you advise somebody to start to calm that down and bring the temperature down a little bit?
You can always excuse yourself from the table. I mean, and I did this not too long ago in another thing, but it's just I give voice to I can't speak right now. I'm upset. I actually give voice to it. Or I exit myself from the room, or I used to have all kinds of things that I would snap on my wrist, or things that I would read. It's going to be all right, or whatever it is. I used to have on my screensaver. Are you fixing, or are you worrying? There are a whole lot of dumb little things you can do to remind you that this is a moment of time and a piece of history, and you've got a beautiful long life ahead of you, and this is just something that we got to get through.
I love that. And what about if somebody is just being extremely disrespectful to you right to your face in the middle of a conversation or a negotiation? What would you say to that?
That was really unnecessary, and let it go. Because people will continue to engage in behavior if they know that behavior will agitate you, if that is in fact what they're trying to do. If it doesn't, it loses its fun.
Yeah. And uh, what would you say is the best way for people to communicate as far as trial exhibits?
I don't know. And the legal game has changed so much since I was in the trenches. I would, with technology and all, I would not venture a guess on that one. I'm going to leave that to you.
I usually always say text message, email or court approved app like Our Family Wizard or something like
Right,
that,
right, right.
or email, just because I think that they're the easiest for, as far as timestamps
Mhm.
and being able to see the entire communication, and they have a date and all that sort of thing. That's my opinion. Just because texts are, they don't always have time and date stamps.
Right.
They are often, you know, way too long to include the entire conversation.
Just
So,
to show you, when I was a judge back in Cleveland, they didn't have text yet.
oh yeah.
This wasn't there. All of that, none of that was there.
This is true. This is a new thing.
Okay, so you're negotiating with a narcissist and you're just, the games, they don't stop. They do not stop. It is like this game that you are stuck in that it's like a freaking nightmare. Like, when can you get out of this thing, right? I mean, how do you get out of a narcissist game? How do you stay out of a narcissist game? Like, if you are feeling like you're being pulled in, you're being sucked in, you feel it like a tide that's sucking you in, and you want to stay out of it. I've been there. I felt like that sucking. I felt it. How do you stay out of that? I figured it out. I've had to deal with them, not just in negotiations, but in my personal life as well. And not just as the target, because I've had to deal with a couple of them where I've been targeted, a couple of covert narcissists, but also just like around me. Because don't you feel like that, like they're around you, like everywhere? I have felt it when they've started to draw me in. And now that I can spot them from a mile away, I know what the one trait is that keeps me myself, to protect myself, to stay out of their games. And by the way, if you want lots and lots of tips and tricks on how to stay powerful, and stay strong in dealing with narcissists, feel free to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Okay, so you want to stay above the fray. You don't want to play into their triggers. Okay. Because they do want to trigger you. You know why? Because it gives them supply. They're like rats in a maze with the cheese. Like, there's that one thing. There's the only thing that they're going for at all times is that narcissistic supply. And yes, there's a hierarchy. Yes, there's the grade A, and then there's like, the coal level, and like, there's different levels of supply for them. Of course, there's like the better version, and then there's like the whatever. But they'll take anything. They're definitely vultures. They'll take any level of supply they can get. But you want to stay above the fray, right? You want to be like the untouchable supply, the one they're trying to get, but they can't quite get their hands on it. They want it, but you just keep slipping out of their hands. They can't quite get you. That's the supply that you want to be. They want you, but you're not touchable. You're not reachable. All right. So it's sort of like the level, where you're trying to get them to respect you. It's kind of like that. I have a video on the only way to get a narcissist to respect you, by the way. And you can definitely check that out too. It's sort of like that, but it's along the same lines. Like, you don't want to take their bait. That's definitely one of those traits. Because they'll try so hard to trigger you. They will try so hard to trigger you. They'll send you those long, long emails saying all sorts of things. They know what your emotional triggers are. They know what your Achilles heels are. They know how to say things that are going to make you want to respond to each and every point. How could you say this about me? How could you say that? That's not true. And this is what's true. And this is the fact. And here's proof, and here's proof, and here's proof, and here's proof. Okay. You don't need to do all of that. You do not need to do all of that. That plays into exactly with it. Now you're down in the mud with them. You just need to say, I'm in receipt of your email. I deny what you're saying. And here's the only thing I need to respond to, which is, I'll see you at 3:00 on Wednesday, or whatever it is that you need to respond to. Those are the types of games that they play. Don't take the bait. In fact, I want you to comment right now, I won't take the bait. That's your mantra for today. I won't take the bait, right? I want to see the comment below so I know that you're listening. I won't take the bait. So remember, they don't have any sense of self. They don't have a strong sense of self. So what is the one trait that really is the best the best thing that makes you like so untouchable, like you're the Dalai Lama against a narcissist. You have a strong sense of self. You know who you are. You are secure in yourself as a person. You have nothing to prove. That is quite literally the opposite of a narcissist. It is the other end of the spectrum. They have zero sense of self. You have a complete, secure sense of who you are as a person. You feel good about yourself. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You are a good person. You want to help people. You know that giving doesn't take away from yourself, that when other people succeed, it doesn't have anything to do with you. You can champion them, all of the things that they're not. That is really the one trait that completely keeps you out of their games because you're not competing with them. I mean, narcissists want to compete with you, and you're just like, I'm not competing. I'm not part of your game. This is not who I am. That is truly the opposite of what the narcissist is. The more you can educate yourself, the more you can arm yourself, the more you know about this, the less worried you're going to be about it, the less scared you're going to be about it, the less anxiety you're going to have around this, because you are going to understand that this is a personality disorder. So you're not going to take it personally. You're going to start to see the symptoms. You're going to start to recognize this is what's going on. You're going to start to look at them as like a 2-year-old having a tantrum on the floor. You're going to start to go, oh, there it is. It's not me. You are going to see the signs, the red flags. You're going to start to understand that they don't have the capacity to have empathy for others. And you're going to recognize that some are covert, some are overt, some are grandiose, that they have this certain way that they go into relationships, the love bombing, the devaluing, the discarding, all of those things. And by the way, I have videos on all of these things, and you can check them out on my channel right here. But we'll start to see these patterns, and you're going to start to be able to recognize what's going on. And these light bulbs are going to start going off in your head, and you're going to go, wow, oh my goodness. I can't believe that this is what is happening, that this is who this is. And you're going to understand there's no reason to be triggered, because not only are they doing this to get a high out of it and get their narcissistic supply out of it, but they're also doing this to use your reaction against you, especially if you are negotiating with them, especially if there's something at stake, especially if there's a reason to try to use that against you in some way, because they're going to try to use that as leverage. 100%. I've seen it all the time. Honestly, you can use their reaction against you, and they're liars. I mean, they can't help themselves. All right. So the number two way of preventing being triggered by narcissists is to start seeing the signs. Now, once you start understanding what narcissism is, now start recognizing the signs. Start recognizing the signs when they start a coming. Here's one of the most perfect examples. I had a client one time who had a situation in Carline. For some reason, she and her ex were dropping their kids off at the same time in the morning. They had triplets, 3 kids that were all the same age. The mother calls me up. I was representing the wife. She calls me up and she says, "Can you believe he did this? Can you believe he did this? And he said that, and he said this. Can you believe? Can you believe? Can you believe?" And I just kept saying, "Yes. Yes, I can believe it. Yes, I can believe it. Yes, I can believe it." And at the end of it, I said, "What I can't believe is that you can't believe it. You've been telling me that this is how he is for 2 years. And not only have you been telling me this, when you first visited my office, you gave me many, many pages of notes telling me how he'd been that way for years. So why can't you believe that he did this in Carline this morning?" And she actually started laughing and said, "You're right. Of course I can believe it. Believe when they act shocked when they don't act like they normally do. So recognize the signs when they lie, when they manipulate, when they gaslight, when they're criticizing you, when they're interrupting you, when they're lining up their flying monkeys, when they're doing the things that narcissists do. I actually call it their to-do list. When you kind of put it into perspective and you realize that they're going to be the way they are, then it doesn't shock you so much, right? So be aware of the signs. That's number 2 way of being preventing yourself from being triggered by narcissists. The third way that you can prevent yourself from being triggered by narcissists is to set super strong boundaries. There are a number of ways of setting super strong boundaries with narcissists, but I say step 1, don't run. Because, they've been conditioning you from the beginning. They're looking to see if you're going to be a good source of supply for them. They want to see, will you do the things they want you to do? Will you allow them to get away with their lying? Will you pour yourself into them? Will you do things for them? You basically become their secretary, their janitor, you work for them, you service them in every possible way. You allow them to treat you however they want, rage at you, whatever it is. And if you don't do these things, then their behavior gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, right? So you have to set boundaries. You have to start reconditioning them in a different direction. So you're going to start letting them know that you're not going to tolerate this kind of abuse anymore, that there's a new game in town. Are they going to like it? No. I call it sort of like the narcissist Ferber method, You're just kind of like letting them cry it out a little bit, right? It's going to be hard for you because you're not going to like it initially. It's going to be difficult for you. It's going to be difficult to let them act like they're going to act, okay? But you have to not let them take advantage of you. One of the ways that you can do that is have one form of communication. I recommend email because there's a time and date stamp and it's much harder to be manipulated. If you have children together, an app is a good way of communicating as well. Something that is much harder for them to manipulate. Okay. Number 4 way of preventing yourself from being triggered by narcissists is not to try to change them. You can change yourself. You can change your behavior. You can change your response to them. Respond, don't react, but don't try to change them because they're not going to change. They're going to change in a sense that they're going to be like shocked that you're not behaving in the same way, but they're not going to actually change from being narcissists. They won't become suddenly empathetic, suddenly care. It's not like they're going to wake up and go, "Wow, I was wrong. You were right. I see the light now. You're amazing. And I'm so sorry. It's not like that's going to happen. It's not going to be like that. There's really nothing that you can do to change them. So, this is a way for you to prevent being triggered by them. Okay. So, and if you're so ready to slay this, I want you to put slay in the comments right now. Slay. All right. Number five way of preventing being triggered by narcissists. Are you ready for it? Number 5, here it comes. Seek outside support because you're gonna need it, because they are going to line up the guns. With narcissists, you were either for them or against them. Everything is black and white with narcissists. And if they realize that you are no longer for them, then that means that you are against them. So important for self-care, for you to have outside support from a narcissist, from friends, family members, therapists, church members, whoever it is that you want to seek outside support from. Make sure you do that, because you will need it. You absolutely will need it. You will need that emotional help, that spiritual help, that stability. Make sure, as Rumi says, seek those who fan your flames. You want people who are fanning your flames, not dousing your fire. Keep your circle tight. You want vibrational energy to be protected. Protect that vibrational energy. Do you feel good after you've been around them? Trust your gut. You want to feel good after you've been around that person. And if you don't, then that person's not for you. 8 ways to remain unfazed, untriggered by those big, hairy bullies themselves. Well, they might not be hairy, but they're definitely bullies. I know. I've been dealing with them a lot all my life, but I definitely know how to remain untriggered and unfazed by them at this point, because I have seen them. I've seen them all. I've seen the worst of them in my law practice, in my coaching practice, and in dealing with them. And now all over the world, I've helped lots and lots of you, millions of you, through this channel. And I know how to help you too. So number 1 is steal boundaries. Steal boundaries. Make sure you set and establish clear boundaries. One of the things I say, if you want to make that power switch, you want to turn it all around. Step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. You want to turn it around. I know you do. You want to stop being on the defensive. You want to start being on the offensive. If you want to do that, you need to set and establish clear boundaries. Protect yourself from that manipulation tactic. You want to stop those fumes from coming in, those toxic fumes. You're breathing toxic air constantly. If you want to start to heal, you want to start to move on, then you've got to set limits on that noxious fumes coming into your lungs, right? Stop the time and energy that you're investing into somebody who's not going to invest it back into you. Don't invest anything more. Shut down those interactions with them. Set and establish clear boundaries, and then never allow them to cross. That's number 1. Number 2, practice self-care. Self-care, prioritize yourself, your emotional well-being, your spiritual well-being, your breathing techniques. You're taking time for yourself. Engage in activities that you enjoy. I say I never allow my thoughts to be unsupervised. I take time for myself. Meditation, spending time with people who lift me up. Rumi has a saying, set your world on fire. Seek those who fan your flames. Make sure you do that. Are the people in your life fanning your flames, or are they dousing your fire? Are they throwing logs on your fire, or are they pouring water on your fire? What are they doing? All right. Practice self-care. I have a whole video, by the way, on self-care when it comes to dealing with narcissists. You might want to check that out. Number 3 is developing self-awareness. Be careful about your triggers. You know how they trigger you. So if you know that they are triggering you, I try to say, let it go by you. Just watch it go by and go, okay, I just saw that happen. And I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to trigger me. And just remember that dealing with a narcissist is like getting arrested. Everything you can do or say, it will be used against you. They will definitely use everything against you. So understand that your reactions, how you respond, everything they say will consciously be used against you. They're going to accuse you of being the manipulative one. Don't get drawn in. They go fishing and they bait you in. So don't allow it. That's number 3. Number 4, don't engage in those power struggles. Imagine if something's pushing on you and you push back and you're pushing against. If you say, I'm not going to let them win, I can't let them win. Well, they're saying the same thing. You got to be smarter than that. You've got to be way more tactical, way more strategic than that. So they thrive on that control. They thrive on that dominance. That's what they're trying to do. Don't get into those power struggles. Don't get into those arguments with them. That's down here. That's low energy. You focus on yourself, your emotional balance instead. Disengage. You're like a gray rock. Okay. I see you. You're lovely. Mm-hmm. Got it. The shorter the words of the answer, the better. It drives them absolutely crazy. And I have a whole video, by the way, on how to respond to narcissistic text messages. Should definitely check that out, right? So, and if you guys can do this so far, say, I can do this in the comments. I can do this. So we're only halfway through. Seek support from others. Seek support from your friends. Seek support from your families. Seek support from people who are going to lift you up. You know how you feel when you're coming away from people. Do you come away from people feeling better, or do they make you feel worse? Don't be around people who are making you feel worse. Be around people who make you feel better, and get help. If you need therapy, we have a sponsor on this channel, BetterHelp. Go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung and get the help and support you need. We receive commissions. Doesn't cost you one single penny extra. We just want you to have help and support from services that are trusted. And join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. And next thing is practice assertiveness and effective communication. Effective communication doesn't look like defending yourself. You never ever defend yourself. And it doesn't look like you have to write a tome every single time they send you something. Like I said, shorter is better. But sometimes you can just write back yes or no. Use I statements rather than you. Stay calm. Never justify, overshare, never explain. Use facts. Pretend like you're reporting the news. I always say, pretend like you're reporting the news. I see that you are upset. You seem to be angry, rather than getting caught up in their drama, trauma, and chaos. When you do that, drives them absolutely nuts. And by the way, I have whole phrases for disarming narcissists, which you can download and get for free at disarmthenarc.com. So go grab those, disarmthenarc.com, and start using those when you're responding to narcissists, disarmthenarc.com. All right. When you develop a strong sense of self-worth, which is number 7, it is the narcissist kryptonite, because they have no sense of self-worth. They don't like when people have a strong sense of self-worth. When you know who you are, when you have confidence in yourself, when you have positive qualities, it resists their attempt to undermine your self-esteem. And then there's nowhere they can go. When you cultivate a strong sense of who you are, they can't prey on you anymore. They prey on people who have a low sense of self-esteem, who they can manipulate. And then finally, the last one is educate yourself. That's why you're doing this. That's why you come here to channels like this, and follow me on my podcast. I have a whole podcast too, by the way. Make sure you subscribe to that. Negotiate Your Best Life. Expand your knowledge about narcissism through books, articles, credible resources. Understand the dynamics and tactics used by narcissists. That way you can respond more effectively and remain untriggered. All of these things will help you to remain untriggered. I want you to know that I've got a powerful tool that can help you. It's phrases for disarming narcissists. Phrases for disarming narcissists is a powerful tool that you can use to have that upper hand in remaining in control, so that you can use it for communicating with narcissists, for emailing narcissists, for when you're like, oh my God, you feel frozen. And so make sure that you grab those tools. You can go to disarmthenarc.com and get them. Make sure, trust me, it'll be a game changer for you. All right. So step one is recognize what's going on and then ground yourself. Remember, you're kind of like dealing with a toddler who's stuck in an adult body. So as soon as you see that the wall of text come in or that wall of email come in, those long things, the thing you have to go hit see more, you go, oh my God, I know what they're doing. I see, you know what happens? They go fishing, they go fishing like that. And then they bait you, and then they trigger you, and then they reel you in, and they go, I got a live one over here. And so the very first step is just to step back and start to see them almost as if they're like a toddler having a tantrum on the floor. And just, this is like the first, like such a important first step, is start to just go almost like I almost say it's almost like a reporter, like reporting the news. Oh, I see what's happening here. I see what's going on. And probably the very first step, almost the very most important step, is to recognize what's happening and just see it. And I just say, like, put an emotional, like like a boundary, like an invisible, um, like, almost like Teflon coming down around you, like that invisible boundary coming down around you. And it just, you just start to be like, I see what's happening, and just start to recognize it and see them for who they are, and recognize that, what they're trying to do to you. And when somebody tries to, trigger you, you just, okay, I see what's happening. I see it. And you know that your heart is racing, that fight or flight's happening, that sympathetic nervous system is kicking in. So you might start to sweat, your heart rate starts to raise, and your thoughts start to race. But at this moment, that's the moment that grounding yourself is so, so critical. Don't allow yourself to be baited. Don't allow yourself to be triggered, because this is when you might do something that they're going to use against you. Remember that everything that you write, everything that you do, all of these things are potential trial exhibits or potential things that they use against you at work. Oh, look, there's the crazy one. There's the person, right? And so your reaction is so important. You have a choice. You have a choice to respond, not react. You have a choice to observe. You can absorb, observe, not absorb, respond, don't react at that moment, right? So, and just remember, it's about them. It's not personal. Remember that people treat other people in the way that it's a direct reflection of the way they feel about themselves. It never has anything to do with you. So, if you're in a meeting and you're with somebody who is a high conflict individual, that they have narcissistic tendencies, and they go to undermine you, they go to try to trigger you. Instead of snapping back, instead of being triggered, take a deep breath. Remind yourself, this isn't about me. This is their issue. Their triggers are not your responsibility. And by doing so, just taking that one pause, that one breath, even that one moment where you just count 1,000, just, go, maybe it's more personal. maybe they have a family member that makes snide remarks to them on a daily basis, or maybe they had a bad child, whatever it is, just you can make a choice in that moment. Instead of being sucked into their emotional vortex, their craziness, you can just take a look at them and say, I'm sure you're having a tough day, whatever. But you keep yourself firmly planted on the ground and just state facts. Do not defend yourself. I always say, do not defend, never explain, justify, overshare. Do not defend yourself. When you defend yourself, you end up being sucked in, drawn in, pulled in. Once you do, you're down into the mud with them. You are in it, right? So do not allow yourself to do that. So recognize and ground yourself is that first step. And then step 2, which I already started to talk about, just be calculated, thoughtful, controlled, and just recall that person who undermined you. Instead of counteracting, being defensive, just respond with a calm question. A lot of times, if you respond with a question, can you clarify that? Clarify what you meant by that. By doing so, you are taking control of the narrative and displaying emotional maturity. Clarify what you mean by that. And for the family member who gets crazy, you can just say, I appreciate your perspective, but I'm happy with my choices. Thank you for your feedback. It diffuses potential conflict. So remember, the first step is to just observe, take control of your emotions, recognize, ground yourself. You can see what's happening. Take that step back. You start to look at them as if they are a toddler having that tantrum on the floor. Emotional Teflon, put that invisible boundary down around you. I always say, then you become like Superman having the bullets off your chest, or Wonder Woman having the bullets off of your wrists. And you just start to see it. You have a shield and you're just smiling behind your shield. Oh, I see you. I remember having a family member one time who is now divorced from my other family member. And, this person was just wildly crazy and very, very triggered about all sorts of things. And came at me one time about something that was crazy. And, and I just remember saying to her, traveling with children can be extremely stressful. I just remember like deflecting it back onto her. And this was long before I knew anything about narcissism or about any of this. But I just remember instinctively saying something like, I'm sure traveling with children can be extremely stressful. Like just knowing that it had nothing to do with me and just not taking that personally. And that's the kind of thing that you can say, like just putting it back onto them. It has nothing to do with you. And just remaining very calm. And I remember when I said that to her, she just went back. She was so almost like stunned by that. It was almost like a deer with headlights, like, oh my God. And so she just stopped and went back on to her merry way and went on to somebody else because she was so stunned by that. It's almost like she didn't expect me to say that or do that, because I didn't take it personally. Like, what are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. I didn't take the bait. So when this happens, if you just don't take the bait, if you don't take that trigger, if you don't allow yourself, if you just stay with like Teflon, grounded, recognize, grounded. So if you can do this, say, I can do this in the comments, right? So, we need to recognize this. We need to support ourselves. We can be non-reactive because let me tell you, Slayers, that I cannot stress enough how important it is to not give them that narcissistic supply that they so deeply crave, because when you give them that supply, that's when they keep coming around. That's when they keep coming back after you, right? So don't go give them that narcissistic supply, that thing that they keep wanting, because if you want to shut them down, you want to shut off that supply source, this is the first step to doing that, right? So you can do this. I've helped many people do it, and you can do it too. So narcissists, they like to prod you, they like to poke you, they like to they just want to get under your skin all the time. They do it on purpose. Why do they do it? They do it on purpose. Why do they do that? Well, there is a short and simple answer to that. They want the narcissistic supply from it, okay? That's why they do everything that they do. So let's reel back. What is narcissistic supply? For those of you who just starting with this whole thing, you maybe haven't watched any of my other videos in the past. Let's talk about what that means. So narcissists, they have no sense of self, okay? They have no inner sense of value. I haven't actually said this in a while in my videos. So they're like that hollow chocolate Easter bunny. They look kind of nice on the outside, but there's nothing going on the inside. And so to have any feeling of value whatsoever, they have to kind of layer it on. And how they layer it on is something called narcissistic supply. And so the way I look at it is there's like different kinds of supply. And so supply can be, the nice things in life, which there's nothing wrong with, by the way, like money and prestige and big houses and great, jobs, being with the right people and status and all those things, which there's nothing wrong with in and of themselves. But, then there's this dark underbelly of what I call narcissistic supply, which there's definitely something wrong with, which is trying to make yourself feel better by pushing people down, like controlling people, devaluing people, debasing people, bolstering yourself by pushing other people down. So those are kind of the various ways that they get narcissistic supply. And they delight in getting supply by triggering people. It's a way of controlling you. They enjoy seeing people squirm and seeing people be intimidated and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of one reason why they enjoy triggering you and seeing you that way. And in a negotiation setting, there are a number of reasons why triggering you can be beneficial to them. It's not just seeing you squirm. It's not just seeing you fly off. There actually can be a few other reasons for it as well. And it was actually well demonstrated in the Netflix miniseries called I Care a Lot, which actually I did a whole video on where I broke it down, which you can definitely check out my breakdown of that miniseries. And the main character was a woman who was supposed to be, taking care of these elderly people, like as a guardian. She was talking to this older woman. There was nothing wrong with her. But of course, this woman, the woman who was like the guardian, would get paid if there was something wrong with these people. So she goes to this nursing home and she's talking to this woman and she purposely triggers this woman. Like she whispers things in her ear to like get her angry. She purposely triggers her. She purposely says things to her. So it's not just to get supply from her, not just to see her squirm, not just to get delight, not just to laugh at how funny it is to like that she's like so, out of control. But there's another even more sinister reason that she did that, because there were cameras watching. So she's like whispering things in this older woman's ear. And so what happens? The older woman stands up. I don't think she stood up. I think she just reached over and started choking the guardian, the woman. And there's the camera watching. So then she was able to catch her and trap her. So another more sinister reason that narcissists intentionally trigger you is because they're able to make you look like the crazy one then. And they're actually able to then make you look like the bad one and use that against you, especially if you have some sort of litigation going on, you have some sort of potential court action. Now they're able to use that. And that's what this woman did in this show. And so you have to be aware of that when narcissists are, intentionally trying to trigger you. It's so hard. It's so hard sometimes because they're, they really do know what your trigger points are, especially if they've known you for a long time. If it's been a romantic relationship or it's a family relationship or if it's business partnership, something where the person has known you for a long time and they've had the opportunity to get to know what your weak points are, they know how to trigger you. And so they'll know what to do, what to say. Even in this situation, like in that show, like she didn't even know her that well, but she knew what to say to get that woman to like try to choke her. And then she takes it right into the judge. She shows the judge, and the judge was like, oh, clearly this woman's a danger. She needs to stay in this place. Clearly there's something wrong with her. Yep. Another reason they try to trigger you is so that they can catch you and trap you, make you look like the crazy one, make you look like the emotional one, make you look like the one that the judge should be looking out for. And please, please, please always remember that every text, every email, every writing, everything you put your hand to is a potential trial exhibit. So don't get triggered. Don't take the bait. They want you to take that bait. They're dying for you to take the bait. So be careful of that. So, number one is to get supply from it. Number two is to goad you into doing something. Number three is they literally get a high from it. They get off on it. They do. Yeah, I know. It's super sick. And if you agree, it's super sick, give me a totally in the comments right now. Yeah, totally. So sick. I know. Number four, the reason why they intentionally trigger you is they want to know, sometimes they just want to make sure that they still have control over you. They want to just check if they still have that power over you. Do I still have you in my little web? Do I still have control over you? Oh, yes, I do. That's number four. Just a little check-in. Let me see if I still do. So sometimes they intentionally trigger you for that reason as well. So don't take the bait. Do not take that bait. You're dealing with that narcissist. They're driving you crazy. They're driving you insane. They're making you feel miserable, powerless, paralyzed. They enjoy watching you sweat. They enjoy making your life miserable. What can you do to stop them right in their tracks? It's so hard sometimes because you feel like right in your face, they do whatever they can to trigger you. They go out of their way to carefully and perfectly curate things to say to you so that you are feeling crazy or that you're triggered. Back in the video that I did, Narcissists Care a Lot, you can definitely check that out.
I am a lioness.
I talked about that show, I Care a Lot, with Rosamund Pike. It was such a perfect example of what happens when you get triggered. So she was sitting there talking to this older woman in the nursing home, and she saw the camera there. She knew that she was going to be able to trigger this woman. So she sat there and she said things over and over and over again to her, like, you're an old woman, you're crazy, you're this, you're that. And the old woman got so triggered that she stood up and actually started choking her. And then what did the narcissist do? She went right into court and used it. Look, she's crazy. And that's what often happens when you're dealing with narcissists in a negotiation setting. They goad you and trigger you so much that you end up making mistakes. You end up doing things that now you have to undo, and you dig your own hole more because they've triggered you. And that's what they want to do. Dealing with a narcissist is like getting arrested. Have you ever heard that one? Yeah, it's whatever you do or say is definitely going to be used against you. So you got to be really, really careful about not being triggered. And in that video that I just referenced, Care a Lot or Narcissists Care a Lot, that I did, I have a whole lot of ideas for you on not getting triggered. So definitely check that out. Okay, so dealing with a narcissist, and you really, really want to make sure that you're not triggered, and you want to shut them down. You want to stop them in their tracks. You want to disarm them. So how do you go ahead and do that? So the very first way that you can do that, the first thing that you can say is, you're right. Because now you're basically just taking away their power. You know, it's sort of like when you push against something, when you push against your hand and the other person is pushing, 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 but then you let go and then the other hand just flies to the side. That's what happens. So you just say, you're right. You know, you're right. I'm worthless. You're right. I'm terrible. You're right. I'm the one that caused all the problems. You're right this, you're right that, whatever. And, you know, then they might start to get mad, like, oh, now you're patronizing me or this, that, and the other. They're going to try to keep you getting into the mud with them. But just say, no, I really think you're right. Yep. So that's definitely one way that you can just start to, you know, shut them down a little bit. The next thing that you can do is you can say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I upset you. I'm sorry it seems to be that you're very angry. I'm sorry that we're having issues. I'm sorry that there are words between us. I'm sorry I didn't say the right thing. Whatever you want to say, you don't necessarily have to say, I'm sorry, like there's something wrong with you, but you could even say, I'm sorry that you're so upset. You know, you could even like observe that to them. Like, I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're angry. Just observe them. So another thing that you can do is just, you know, without emotion or without any kind of issues, just, you know, without feeling triggered, just say, I don't want to have this argument anymore. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to allow you to disrespect me. I can have this conversation with you when you are ready to have a conversation that is rational. So that's the next thing that you can say is, I don't want to argue with you, or I'm not going to argue with you. Okay? So another thing that you can do is say something to them like, I can see where you might think that. I mean, even if you don't think that, well, I can see that. Or I can see that that's your perception, or I can accept that that's your perception of me. You're not admitting to anything at that point. You're just saying, I can see that. Okay, fine. So that's another way that you can do it. And if you are so ready to stop them in their tracks, give me a stop them in their tracks in the comments right now. Okay, so the next thing that you can say to them to shut them down is, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. You don't have to say, I agree with you, you're right. You don't even have to say any of those other things. You can just say thank you. Because what are they going to say to thank you, right? I mean, they'll be like, thank you for what? You know, I mean, they'll try to continue to get you down in the mud with them, right? But then you're just both rolling around in mud, you know? Neither of you are getting anywhere with that. So by staying away from being triggered like that and just, you know, making observations, you know, I always say just the facts, ma'am, or sir, you know, never explain, justify, or overshare. Don't try to get, you know, defensive. Don't try to get them to see the error of their ways. They're never going to come to any of that. So you might as well give up on that idea, all right? So what's the last one leading up to the drum roll of the last one? It is say nothing. Just say nothing at all. Don't respond. Just walk away. Go gray rock. You know, stick to your boundaries. Walk away from them. And by the way, if you want to know what the difference is between ghosting, silent treatment, and having boundaries, check out my video on that topic as well. But the last thing you can do is just say nothing at all. Just walk away and just say, you know, I'm having my life, you know, namaste and walk away. That's one of my favorite little sayings. Namaste and walk away. Wish you well, but I wish you well over there. Like that's what I say about the narcissists that were in my life. I wish them well, but I wish them well over there, away from me, not in my space anymore. I'm done with that.
Just is really and truly not an option. And you listening to us as you're reflecting on everything that Rebecca Zung is sharing with you based on her personal experience, her professional experience, and all of this extensive research, the 40 million views on her YouTube channel, like she knows this inside and out. You have this phrase, today is a great day to start negotiating my best life. And if you see yourself reflected in the comments or the stories that Rebecca is talking about, there are things that you say, Rebecca, that you need to stop doing immediately if you want to get out of a narcissistic relationship. What are the things you need to stop doing in order to cut off that supply and get out of there and negotiate for yourself?
Yeah. So step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. So in the strategy, which is the first step, you have to have these action steps. So in that first action step, step 1, don't run. Stop allowing them to speak to you in a disrespectful manner. I mean, that's the very first step. You know, I know you feel like it's so overwhelming and it's fearful and it's scary and it feels like, oh my God, you're going to have all this backlash. And I know that, because you feel like they're going to have that tantrum, right? But that very first boundary that very first baby step can be, I'm not going to allow myself to be spoken to in a way that's disrespectful. That can be your very first step today, because I know you have to course correct. It's like, stop that conditioning, 180-degree turn, right? Stop that conditioning. So first boundary is that start looking at them as if they are a child having a tantrum on the floor. Start putting that invisible shield down around you, and like Superman having, bullets off your chest, or Wonder Woman with the gold bracelets. Remember, they didn't attach themselves to you because you have so little value. They attached themselves to you because you had so much. They devalue you because you have so much value. So remember that. Start looking at them like that. Stop defending yourself. Never explain, justify, or overshare. So, just start looking at them as if they're a third party. Just say, we can discuss this when you have calmed down. Or, I can see that you are upset. I can see that you are angry. Observing their behavior. Let it go by you. Almost like pretend like the words are like looking, whizzing by you. I always say it's sort of like dodgeball. When I was a kid, dodgeball was a big thing, So like I always remember like the words just like they're looking at you, hitting the wall.
So is that, just so I know, because we're going to get a ton of questions, which is, okay, wait, how do I allow myself to not speak? How do I allow myself to hold a boundary and not be disrespected when this person barrages me with texts or yells at me and then I get paralyzed? And you have these essential phrases that you coach people to use to disarm a narcissist and observe the tantrum, acknowledge it, but not let it hit you. Can you share a bunch of those phrases that you coach people to use?
Yes. You can say things like, I agree with you. I agree with you that we're not going to agree. I agree with you that that's your opinion. You can say things like that. I agree with you is always a good one because they kind of hear, I agree with you, but just make sure that you follow it up with, I agree that that's your opinion. If they're saying things like, you're a terrible mother or whatever, you just make sure that I agree that that's your opinion. Your triggers are not my responsibility. You can always say things like that because they often say, it's your fault this or your fault that, something like that. But you can always make sure to remove yourself from a situation where you're not being respected.
I love these phrases. I understand that's how you feel. Your approach is not working for me. Let's discuss this when you're less emotional or angry. Do you have any coaching for the fact that I think most people are afraid to say that because they're then going to invite narcissistic rage?
Mm-hmm.
So when you use one of these phrases to connect with your power and to not allow yourself to be disrespected, I understand that's how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then the person raises the stakes and starts raging at you. What would you advise somebody to do that is just starting to practice these boundaries and create boundaries and not run away from the situation?
If they feel like they are going to be in harm's way in some way, then they really may need to remove themselves from this same physical space.
Okay.
There's a saying that says that, if you don't want to be a doormat anymore, get up off the floor. And, you train people, you condition people on how to treat you. And that's, it may sound harsh, but it is the absolute truth. And narcissists are the best ones for that. That's just the truth of the matter.
So if they don't change and somebody's either unwilling or too scared to leave right now, how can you truly negotiate with somebody like that?
Well, you can, because what I teach works.
Rebecca, I just have to say, I love the swagger. Well, you can, because what I teach works, because that makes me believe you. And you're referring to your SLAY method. And SLAY is a 4-part framework that you follow in the courtroom and in life for dealing with, negotiating with, and winning against a narcissist. Can you explain what SLAY stands for?
SLAY stands for strategy, leverage, anticipate, and you.
So let's start with the first one, S. What does it stand for?
S stands for developing a super strong strategy, which is the first part of that is creating a vision. If you're just trying to communicate in general, if you're just trying to figure out what to do with them, if you're in a family situation, if you're just trying to, figure out how to deal with them in life, if it's your neighbor, if it's your tenant, what is it that you want? So many times people are like, I just want them to stop, or I just want peace. That's not a goal. What you want to be specific about what you want. So
is there a reason why peace can't be a goal? And let's take the example that you either have a mother or a father who is a narcissist. And all you do want is peace. You are not ready to become estranged and to remove them from your life. And you want to figure out a strategy that helps you know what your vision is. How do you figure that out? Because, to your point, you always talk about these 3 C's that you can't change them, you can't control them, and you can't, what's the other one?
You can't cause it, control it, or cure it.
That's right. You can't cause this, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. And so knowing that, how do you create a vision if it's your mother or your father? Like, what questions do you ask yourself?
I still think even if it's your mother or father, you can create a more specific vision around what that relationship should look like for you.
I don't want to be triggered all the time. I don't want her or his BS to trigger me or make me feel manipulated.
Right. Or even put that in positive terms. Like,
Do I have to?
Yeah.
Put it in positive terms. Okay. What does that look like?
Right. So, we will see each other X number of times a year. And during those visits, we will have these kinds of conversations. And, this is how I will define the relationship. And, I think that you should be more specific like that, because
I love that.
Yeah, I think that will be, because you get what you envision in life, right? So
I love that. I love that, because you're right. I think you're so conditioned when you're dealing with somebody who's narcissistic to think about it from what you're enduring versus what would you actually want. And a lot of times it's like, I'd like to be able to walk into a school function where my ex is and not feel like I've just left my body in a panic attack. I put that in a negative, but that's a very common one that I noticed, is that people dealing with exes and feeling completely enmeshed and triggered and wanting to be able to feel powerful and unaffected anytime I see them.
Right. Yeah.
Is that positive enough?
No, I think it.
Okay.
I mean,
I love you, Rebecca. Help us.
I think it should be, I want to be able to walk into a school function and sit next to them and be able to discuss our child together and be happy for our child together and celebrate her together and go out for pizza together afterwards and laugh together during the show. Or, I think that if you can be like really specific like that it would actually be more beneficial for you.
Beautiful. L stands for leverage. What does that mean?
So leverage is where you're actually creating that motivation for the person to want to be, squeezed and incentivized to want to come to a resolution with you. And in the case of a narcissist, it's going to have to be a situation where that diamond level supply is potentially going to be threatened. Or, there are times where you could potentially, what I call, fluff for favor, vomit later, so where you're
fluff for favor, vomit later.
Yes, where you sort of fluff up their ego in order to get something, give them something they want in order to get something you want. Because
I do this all the time with someone in my life, actually.
Yes.
Now that I'm realizing I have really developed this strategy. I do deploy a strategy. I'm realizing as you're talking to feed a particular person's ego that they are getting their way, that they're the most important person in the room. And I do that as a manipulation strategy so that I can get what I want.
Exactly. Just as long as you know that you're only doing it in order to get, what you want. So if you have to go shower or vomit later, then, you do the thing. But, it's in order to get what you want later. So, but more often than not, what you kind of have to do is use your documentation, because they lie so much, because they're so careless, frankly, I mean, they don't think you're ever going to keep track of all the different times that they say things that are, they'll say something in a text message, they'll say something in an email, they'll say, I mean, honestly, they are very irrational. They, as we talked about at the beginning of this show, how many times their memory is faulty or whatever. But if you keep track, that's how you create your leverage in a negotiation. And you say, hey, you said this, you said this, you said this. I am going to present this in court. I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator. You can call it whatever you want. Many times empaths are uncomfortable with that sort of thing. You have to be on the offensive when you are dealing with a narcissist. It's not doing anything other than what works. I mean, it's not anything that's, unethical at all. But you have to do the things that are offensive. Whereas most empaths are like, I don't want to fight. I just want to resolve this peacefully. Let's just come to a resolution. But if you want to come to a resolution and you want them to stop jerking you around and you want them to leave you alone, this is what you have to do. Because they're never going to leave you alone. They're never going to stop. So many people come to me and they say, oh, we're still in court. It's 5 years later. They won't leave me alone. And I say, well, then you haven't figured out what your diamond level supply is yet. You haven't figured out how to, what your leverage is yet.
I bet that part, figuring out your leverage, is the hardest part because you feel so spun around by the narcissist. So let me just see if I can track with you here. In your 4-part framework for negotiating with a narcissist, it's SLAY. So remember, everybody, S is strategy. You have to have a vision of what you're looking for and that you want to get out of the relationship. And again, you have to have this going in or you're going to be spun around like a top. And the example that you gave, Rebecca, is my strategy is I'd like to sit next to them in a school function and discuss our child in a civil manner. The next step is L. And L is for leverage. And again, this has to do with that narcissistic supply. They're always going to want to feed their ego. This never ends. You've learned this. And you have to accept that as fact and then use your leverage to give them what they want, even if it makes you vomit later. And you're doing this, you're giving them the supply, the attention, the praise, the this, the that, the weekend trade that they're asking for. You're giving them that, even if it may, I don't want to have to do this. Why? So you can get what you want. And the reason why this is important is because when you supply them with something, what happens? You go into the cycle where they're nice to you. And lots of leverage, by the way, Rebecca is teaching you, comes down to giving them what they want, but also documenting what they say, what they do, and how many times you say something and how many times you do something. And why do you need the documentation, especially if you're in sort of a confrontational kind of thing? And you don't have to be in court for this, by the way. This might be that you constantly argue with your parents about who's hosting the holidays. Keep a record. Keep a record so you have proof. I'm dead serious about this because this comes down to leverage and to supply, right? And this also keeps you from going crazy. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that when you give them something, they're in a good mood so you can sneak in what you want. See how this works? I love this. So now that we understand the strategy and the leverage, A comes next. And you say, Rebecca, you and I got to be able to be 2 steps ahead. Always. You got to anticipate. Can you teach us what you mean by that?
So A is where you can actually figure out the type of narcissist that you're dealing with, because they will all act a little differently in negotiations. And So a covert narcissist is much more likely to use the flying monkeys and pretend like they're the nice one and I'm the victim and, oh, poor me and all of that. Covert narcissists are going to be the first one if somebody has cancer to show up with the basket and be right at their side in the hospital and, that sort of thing, but smearing everybody on the side, so you just have to be careful of who you're dealing with. And then the anticipation is that also that knowing that they're going to try to bait you. I always say they go fishing, they go, shh, and then they reel you in like this. And then once they have you, you're in the mud and you're down there.
That makes a lot of sense. So what's the final part of the 4-part SLAY framework?
The why, which is you standing in your authentic power. For you on the offensive, and then also your mindset. Because 100% of winning is your mindset. And if you don't believe you can win, nobody can help you. And, I have so many people who have said to me, that I can't win or I can't do this or whatever. And I always say to people, do you want to be right about that? Or do you actually want to win? Because you can be right or you can actually get out of this and win, but you can't have both, right? The good news is that there is a way to deal with them. Most people think that there's not. Most people say you can't negotiate with a narcissist. You can't deal with a narcissist. There's nothing you can do. That it's pointless. It's hopeless. The good news is that there is actually a framework. It is actually pretty simple. They are actually pretty simple to understand. And that once you get on the other side of it and you stand up to them and you grab that power, the freedom that you feel, the feeling that you feel is actually beyond better than anything else. The people who I've helped through my programs are so powerful now. I actually now have master coaches who are becoming, they're graduating from my coaching program now. And it is beyond anything else that's more magical and more powerful than ever. That's the beautiful thing. You and you alone define your value. You can win.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because we are all benefiting